Mama, can I get the hot chocolate? The one with the big marshmallows on top? Yes, baby, just let me order first. I never thought a Tuesday evening layover at Crestwood Station would be the last time I'd feel safe in a public place. Sage had been asking about that hot chocolate since Monday. She'd seen it on a sign outside the station cafe the week before. One of those tall glass mugs with the oversized marshmallows piled high, and she hadn't let it go. All week, every morning while I braided her hair, every evening while I packed her bag. Mama, can we stop at the cafe? Mama, you promised we'd try it. I worked a 12-hour shift coordinating a corporate gala that ran 40 minutes over schedule. My heels were already off inside my bag. We had 19 minutes before our train, and all I wanted was to sit down for 5 of them. But Sage was bouncing beside me through the station concourse, her little striped sweater bright under the terminal lights, her hand wrapped tight around 2 of my fingers, the way she always held on when she was excited about something. I told myself we had time. 19 minutes was enough. We found a table near the window. The cafe was the kind of place that felt expensive without trying. Marble countertops, leather seats, brass fixtures catching the low evening light. Sage climbed into her chair and immediately pressed her nose against the glass to watch the trains. I ordered her hot chocolate. I ordered myself a coffee I knew I wouldn't finish. For about 4 minutes, everything was completely fine. Then I looked up, and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Cole was moving through the far end of the concourse. Not hurrying, he never hurried. He moved the way he always moved when he had already decided something. Shoulders forward, jaw set, eyes scanning until they found exactly what they were looking for. He wasn't supposed to be within 300 feet of us. The protective order was explicit. I had a copy of it folded in my purse. I had a copy of it photographed on my phone. I had memorized the case number, the way some people memorize prayers. None of that mattered right now. Sage felt it before she saw it. Her hand found my wrist under the table and squeezed. Mama. Just that one word, barely a whisper. The way she said it told me she already knew. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice even. Put your coat on, baby. We're going to the platform early. But the cafe wasn't big enough. The distance between us and the exit wasn't enough. Around us, travellers moved through the station with their luggage and their noise and their ordinary Tuesday evenings, completely unaware that the air in this particular corner of the world had just turned into something dangerous. Nobody ever knows. Not until it's already happening. Cole's eyes found mine across the room, and he smiled. If this story is already pulling you in, hit like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss what happens next. Because on this channel, every story hits harder than the last. And trust me, what that Don did when he removed his watch, nobody in that restaurant saw it coming. He crossed the cafe in 12 steps. I counted them because counting was the only thing my brain could do besides scream. Imara. The way he said my name had never been affection. Not really. It was always ownership, dressed up as familiarity. You really thought you could just walk away from me? Take my daughter and disappear like I'm nothing? Cole. I kept my voice low, controlled. The same voice I used when a client was spiraling and I needed to bring the temperature down before something broke. Not here, please. Not in front of Sage. He wasn't listening. He never listened. That was the thing people never understood about men like Cole. It wasn't that they couldn't hear you. It was that your words had simply stopped registering as something worth processing. Sage pressed herself into my side. I felt her fingers curl into the fabric of my blazer. You think a piece of paper makes you untouchable? He stepped closer. I could smell the liquor beneath the cologne. You think you're better than me now because you've got some office job and some judge's signature? Cole, please. His hand moved fast. It always moved fast. 1 second I was standing, and the next his fingers were closed around my throat, and the marble countertop was pressing into the small of my back, and there was no air. There was simply no air at all. I heard Sage before I saw her. She made a sound I will spend the rest of my life trying to forget. Something between a sob and a scream, and then she was beside me, both hands clutching my arm, her whole small body shaking. Stop, please, stop, please. The cafe had gone completely still. I could feel it the way you feel a held breath. Chairs scraping back, someone's cup set down too carefully. The particular silence of a room full of people choosing not to move. Then something shifted in the air. Not loudly, not dramatically. The way pressure changes before a storm. A quality to the quiet that hadn't been there a second before. I registered movement at the edge of my vision. The corner table. A man rising from his seat with the kind of unhurried certainty that had nothing to do with urgency and everything to do with decision. He'd already set his espresso down. His watch, thick-banded, unmistakably expensive, lay flat on the marble beside the cup. He had placed it there deliberately, like something he didn't want damaged. Cole didn't notice him until it was too late to matter. He didn't announce himself. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't perform any of it for the room. One hand closed around Cole's wrist, not grabbing, more like correcting, and the angle shifted in a way that made Cole gasp and release my throat in the same instant. I stumbled back, pulling Sage against me, and the air rushed back into my lungs so hard my eyes watered. Cole spun around, ready to swing. He didn't get the chance. The man stepped forward once, just once, and delivered a single strike to Cole's jaw. Clean. Economical. The sound it made echoed off the cafe walls and the brass fixtures and the tall glass windows looking out at the platform. Cole went down like something had been switched off inside him. The room stayed silent. The man stood over him for a moment, then straightened up and adjusted his cuff with 2 fingers, like he was fixing something that had come slightly loose. That was all. He was Korean-American, somewhere in his 40s, with sharp features and dark hair slicked back from his face. His charcoal suit was fitted the way expensive things are fitted, like it had been built specifically around him. Tattoos climbed his neck above the open collar, covered both hands to the knuckle. He had the kind of stillness that didn't come from calm, it came from certainty. He looked at me. Not at Cole on the floor, not at the cafe watching him. At me. Are you all right? I couldn't form words. I nodded. He crouched down in front of Sage without ceremony. She had buried her face in my side, still shaking. Hey, his voice dropped, gentled at the edges. It's over. You were very brave, standing beside her like that. Sage peeked at him, didn't speak. But the shaking slowed. He straightened, and somewhere behind him a second man appeared, broad-shouldered, dark suit, having materialized from the crowd the way water finds a crack. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, and the entire perimeter of the situation changed. Call the police, the man said to him, without looking away from me. Make sure they have the protective order number before they arrive. Then he reached into his jacket and held out a card. Simple, cream-coloured. Just a name and a number in clean type. I took it with fingers that were still trembling. I have a protective order, I said. The words came out thinner than I intended. I know. He glanced down at Cole, who was conscious now and very still, and something in his expression made it clear he had already assessed the full scope of what a piece of paper was and was not capable of. That's not what this is. He nodded toward the card in my hand. That is. The police arrived 6 minutes later. Cole was arrested without incident. The man, I would learn his name only when the officer asked for it, when he gave his statement with the same unhurried precision he did everything else, was Renzo Yoon. He waited until Sage and I were seated, until my hands had mostly stopped shaking, before he walked us through the station and out to the platform. His bodyguard stayed a few steps behind, scanning the concourse. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. When our train was called, he paused. Men like him don't stop because they've been arrested. He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone states weather. If anything changes, use the number. Then he turned and walked back into the station, and I stood on the platform holding his card, with Sage's hand in mine and the imprint of Cole's fingers still visible on my throat, thinking about a man who had removed his watch before stepping into something dangerous. Like he'd already known how it would end. Cole called from the detention facility 11 times the first night. I watched the unknown numbers appear on my screen and did not answer a single one. By morning, I had blocked 6 different variations of the same number. By Tuesday, I had stopped flinching every time my phone lit up. I told myself that was progress. Rhonda, my closest friend, and the only person at the event agency who knew the full history, brought me coffee on Wednesday and set it on my desk without saying anything. She'd seen the bruising. It had faded to yellow at the edges, but it was still there, still visible above my collar. And she was the kind of person who understood that sometimes the kindest thing you can offer someone is silence and hot coffee. "He's still calling?" she asked eventually. "He was. I blocked them." She nodded slowly. "And the other thing? The man from the station?" I told her only the outline, enough to explain why I wasn't falling apart. "He had someone call. Cole's been denied bail. They escalated the charges." Rhonda looked at me for a long moment. He had someone call. His assistant. She was very professional about it. She wrapped both hands around her own mug and said nothing more. But I could feel the question she wasn't asking sitting in the space between us, and I didn't have a clean answer for it yet. That evening, I picked Sage up from school myself, the way I had every day since the station. She came through the front doors holding a painting she'd made. Blue sky, green grass, a yellow figure she told me was a lion, and she talked about it the whole way to the car. I had just buckled her in when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no contact name. I almost ignored it. Something made me open it instead. The image loaded slowly, the way bad news always seems to arrive, incrementally, giving you just enough time to hope you're wrong before confirming that you're not. It was Sage. That morning, outside the school gate, backpack on, reaching up to take her teacher's hand. I recognized her striped sweater, the way her braids were done, the exact angle of the entrance I had walked her through at 8:15. Beneath the photo, 4 words. "He can't watch forever." My hand was shaking before I'd finished reading it. I looked at Sage in the back seat. She was holding her painting up to the window, showing the lion to the parking lot. I called Renzo before I had consciously decided to. He answered on the first ring. I told him what I was looking at. He asked me to forward it immediately. His voice hadn't changed. Same, measured, unhurried register. But something in the quality of his silence afterward told me the temperature on his end of the call had shifted considerably. "Stay in the car," he said. "Don't leave the school lot until someone reaches you." "Sage is right here, I can't—" 10 minutes. Can you give me 10 minutes? I looked at my daughter, pressing her lion painting against the glass. Yes. It was 7 minutes. A dark sedan pulled up beside me, and a man in a suit stepped out and stood facing the street with his hands loose at his sides, watching the road with professional patience. My phone buzzed again. Renzo this time. "There are 2 more at the school entrance. They'll be there until I say otherwise." I sat in that parking lot for a long time after Sage fell asleep on the drive home. Long enough for something to settle into place that I hadn't been willing to name yet. He had not asked permission. He had simply acted, the same way he had at the station, not with urgency, but with certainty. Like protecting us was not a favour, it was just what he did. I didn't know how to feel about that. I only knew that for the first time in days, I could breathe. He suggested dinner the following Saturday. Just the three of us, him, me, and Sage, at a place he described only as quiet and private. Sage, who had decided somewhere between the station and the parking lot incident that Renzo Yoon was fundamentally trustworthy, voted yes before I'd finished explaining the invitation. The restaurant was a converted greenhouse on the north side of the city that I had never known existed. Low light through glass ceilings, small tables arranged between plants that had no business being that green in autumn. The staff greeted Renzo by name and led us to a table near a small indoor fountain. Sage immediately wanted to know if there were fish in it. There were. That settled the question of her attention for the first 20 minutes. We talked about easy things while she was occupied. Her school, my work, the logistics of the upcoming weeks. He was easier to talk to than I expected from a man who expressed most things through action and economy. He listened the way people do when they are actually interested, rather than simply waiting for their turn to respond. Then Sage wandered a few feet further along the fountain to count the fish from a different angle, and the conversation changed. "Can I ask you something honestly?" I said. He set down his glass. "Go ahead." "The station. You didn't know us. You had no reason to get involved. So I need to understand. Why did you?" He was quiet for long enough that I thought he might redirect the question. Then he leaned forward slightly, his forearms resting on the table, and looked at the fountain rather than at me. "I had a daughter," he said. "Her name was Ara. She was 5. He paused. "Her mother was Ji-yeon. We'd been married 6 years. Another pause, longer this time. There was a car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in a meeting 40 minutes away. By the time I got the call, they were already gone." The fountain made a soft, continuous sound in the background. Sage was crouched beside it, counting under her breath. "That was 8 years ago," he continued. "I have spent every year since then building things, acquiring things, managing things. Because movement felt like purpose, and purpose felt like survival." He looked at me then. "At the station, when I saw your daughter on her knees, the way she was holding her hands, the sound she was making, something broke open that I had been keeping very carefully sealed." He said it without performance, without asking for anything in return. Just the fact of it, laid flat on the table. I thought, not again. Not while I'm sitting right here. I didn't speak for a moment. Across the room, Sage looked up from the fountain and waved at us, satisfied with whatever number she had arrived at. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. He looked down at it, then back up at me. And for the first time since the station, since I'd watched him stand over Cole adjusting his cuff like nothing had happened, he looked like someone who could be reached. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "About Ara. About Ji-yeon." He turned his hand over beneath mine, didn't say anything, didn't need to. Sage came back to the table, announcing she had counted 17 fish, which she felt was an excellent number, and climbed into her chair with complete satisfaction. Renzo asked her, very seriously, whether she thought 17 was better or worse than 16. She considered this for a long time before deciding it was better, because 17 was odd, and odd numbers were more interesting. He nodded, like she had told him something important. I watched them and felt something shift quietly inside my chest. Not loudly, not all at once. The way things shift when they have been loosening slowly for a while and finally let go. The prosecutor called it a sentencing hearing. What it actually was the last room I ever wanted to walk into. I had told myself I wouldn't go. I had rehearsed the conversation where I called the prosecutor's office and explained that I had done enough, that I had given my statement, that Cole's arrest and the evidence and the footage from the station cafe should be sufficient, without requiring me to sit 10 feet away from him in a room I couldn't leave. Then I thought about Sage, about the way she still woke up some nights and came to find me, climbing into my bed without explanation, pressing her back against my side like she needed to confirm I was still there. About the next woman Cole would find once he got out, if the sentence was light enough and the time short enough for him to believe he had gotten away with something. I called the prosecutor back and told her I would be there. Renzo didn't ask whether he could come. He simply told me what time he would arrive. I had stopped finding that quality in him unsettling somewhere around the 3rd week, and had started finding it, quietly, like something I could lean against. The courthouse was the particular kind of cold that has nothing to do with temperature. Grey floors, fluorescent light, the specific acoustic flatness of a room built for procedure rather than comfort. I sat at the front with the prosecutor and kept my hands folded in my lap so nobody could see that they weren't entirely steady. Renzo sat directly behind me. I couldn't see him. I didn't need to. I could feel the particular quality of stillness he brought into rooms, the way the air organised itself differently around him, the way people instinctively left an extra foot of space in his direction without quite knowing why. It was enough. It was more than enough. When they brought Cole in, my whole body registered it before my eyes did. Some animal part of me that had spent 2 years learning his footsteps, his cadence, the specific rhythm of him entering a room. He looked thinner, harder around the eyes. His lawyer was already arranging papers, building the case for leniency, for context, for the version of Cole Mercer that existed in the narrative he preferred for himself. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The station security footage, the photographs of the bruising on my throat, documented the morning after, purple and precise, shaped exactly like fingers. Sage's therapy records, 6 weeks of sessions with a child psychologist, words like hypervigilance and regression and trauma response, appearing in clinical language that somehow made it more real rather than less. When my name was called, I stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else and walked to the front of the room. I had written my statement 3 times. The first version was too angry. The second was too careful. The third was simply true, which turned out to be the hardest version to write and the only one worth reading. I described what it felt like to have my throat closed in a public room while my daughter watched. I described Sage's hands, the way she had pressed them together, the sounds she had made. I described the nightmares, the nights she came to find me, the questions she had asked me twice in the weeks after. "Mama, if he comes back, who's going to help us?" My voice shook from the second sentence to the last. I did not stop. When I sat back down, I felt a single, brief pressure on my shoulder. 1 hand, 1 second, then gone. It was enough to keep me from coming apart completely. The judge didn't take long. She looked at Cole over the top of her glasses with the expression of someone who had heard every variation of this particular story and had long since stopped being surprised by any of them. His lawyer had used words like momentary and circumstantial and genuine remorse. The judge had listened to all of it without her expression changing once. "Mr. Mercer." Her voice was even and final, the way verdicts are supposed to sound. "You violated a court-issued protective order, committed aggravated assault in a public space, and did so in the direct presence of a minor. The evidence is unambiguous, and the impact is documented. She set down her pen. I am sentencing you to 9 years in state prison. The existing protective order will be extended indefinitely upon your release. 9 years. I said the number to myself silently, the way you test the weight of something before you decide whether to believe it. The room moved into its procedural conclusion around me. Papers, signatures, the low murmur of the attorneys. I sat very still and focused on breathing at a normal rate, which was harder than it sounds. They came to escort Cole out through the side door. He stood, adjusted his jacket with the particular dignity of a man still trying to perform control, and then turned. I thought he was going to look at me. He didn't. He looked at Renzo. What was on his face in that moment was not anger. It was not defiance. It was the specific, clarifying fear of a man who has just fully understood the dimensions of the mistake he made and knows, with complete certainty, that he will spend a long time thinking about it. Renzo looked back at him with an expression that contained nothing at all. Cole was gone in seconds. I made it through the rest of the formalities on some automatic register of myself that knew how to shake the prosecutor's hand and gather my things and walk toward the exit. I held it together through the corridor and through the heavy doors and all the way down the wide stone steps in the grey afternoon light. Then the air hit me, and something in my chest simply gave way. It wasn't a quiet thing. It came up from somewhere I had been compressing for 2 years, and it was not graceful, and I did not have time to manage it or redirect it into something more controlled. I stood on the courthouse steps, and I cried the way you cry when the thing you have been bracing against finally stops coming. Renzo stepped in front of me. He didn't say anything. He didn't offer words or reasons or perspective. He simply put his arms around me, steady and sure. And I pressed my face against his shoulder and let everything that had been held in tight places finally move. We stood there for a long time. The city went on around us. "It's over," he said quietly. Not as comfort, as fact. And for the first time since a Tuesday evening in a station cafe, when everything changed, I believed that it actually was. He told me he wanted to show me something. 2 weeks after the sentencing, on a Saturday afternoon while Sage was at my cousin's place, building what she had described as a very important blanket fort, he offered no other details, which I had learned by then was simply how Renzo operated. Information arrived on a need-to-know basis, and he made the determination about what you needed to know. We drove through a part of the city I had passed through but never stopped in. Tree-lined streets, older houses set back from the pavement, the kind of neighbourhood that felt like it had been quietly keeping itself nice for decades without needing anyone to notice. He pulled up in front of a townhouse with a small front garden and a porch light already on, warm against the late afternoon grey. "Whose is this?" I asked. He turned off the engine and looked at me the way he did when he had decided something. "Go inside first." The key was already in his hand. He unlocked the door and stepped back so I could go in first, which I understood now was a deliberate thing he did, giving me the room before he entered it, letting me arrive somewhere on my own terms. I stepped inside and stopped moving. It was the kind of space I had described to myself, privately, as a future I was not sure I was allowed to want. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, windows that let in actual light, a kitchen with counter space, open shelving, a table that had room for more than 2 people to sit around it comfortably. Everything was already furnished. Warm colours, clean lines. Nothing excessive, just considered. Like someone had paid close attention to the difference between what looks impressive and what actually feels like home. He led me upstairs without speaking. The first room was clearly meant for me. A reading chair by the window, a bed that took up space in a generous way, soft curtains in a colour I would have chosen myself. The second room made my throat close. Sage's favourite colour is a specific shade of teal she once identified by pressing her face against a display in a craft store and refusing to move until I acknowledged it was exactly right. The walls were that colour. The bookshelf was already filled. There was a desk with a small lamp and a pencil cup and a stuffed elephant on the bed that was arranged so carefully it was obvious someone had thought about it. "How did you—" "I paid attention," he said simply. I turned away from the doorway before he could see my face fully. The third room was set up as a workspace, a proper desk, a wide monitor, a filing cabinet, organised the way a professional workspace is organised when someone actually understands the work. And on the desk, a single envelope. I picked it up with hands that were not entirely steady and opened it. Inside was an acceptance letter to an advanced event management certification program at an institute I had looked at twice and quietly closed the browser tab on both times because the tuition was not something I could look at directly without it hurting a little. Behind the letter was a receipt. Payment confirmed. Paid in full. I stood in that room for a long time. Long enough that Renzo came to stand in the doorway. "You didn't have to do this," I said. My voice came out thinner than I intended. "I know. Renzo, you told me you gave it up when Sage was born." He said it plainly, without drama. "Not because you stopped wanting it, because you ran out of room. I'm giving you the room back." I turned around. He was leaning against the doorframe with his hands in his pockets, watching me with the steady, patient expression of a man who has learned how to wait for things without needing them to happen quickly. "Why?" I asked. The real question, the one underneath all the other questions. "Because you and Sage gave me something back that I thought was gone." His voice shifted, something rougher at the edges, less controlled. "A reason to build something that matters. A reason to protect something real." He paused. "I don't do things halfway, Imara. I never have." I crossed the room and put my arms around him, and he held on in the way he did everything, completely, without reservation, like he had already decided and was simply following through. 3 months later, on a Sunday afternoon, Renzo took us to the park. Not a new place, the same park where we had sat across from each other for the first time after the station and talked honestly about what we were and what we were becoming. The same bench, the same view of the path winding through the old trees, the same particular quality of light through the branches in the late afternoon. Sage had been here long enough to establish territory. She had identified a slight hill near the far end of the path as the best running hill in the park, and was currently demonstrating this to a pigeon who seemed unconvinced. Renzo and I sat on the bench and watched her. Things had settled into a shape over the past 3 months. A good shape. The kind that arrives not dramatically, but incrementally. The way trust actually builds when it's being built on something solid. He had dinner with us most Thursdays. He had come to Sage's school assembly and sat in a small plastic chair in the second row without complaint. He had learned how Sage took her hot chocolate now. Less marshmallows than originally requested, because she had decided stacking them was more interesting than eating them, and too many left no room for architecture. He had become, quietly and without announcement, someone we arranged our life around. Not because we had to, because it felt like the right thing to do with someone who showed up the way he showed up. Sage crested her hill for the 3rd time and threw her arms out at the top. "She's happy," Renzo said. "She is." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and set a small velvet box on the bench between us. I looked at it, then at him. "I'm not asking you to marry me today," he said, direct as always. "You're still building, still becoming. I don't want to rush the middle of a story to get to the ending." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single stone in a clean setting. The kind of thing that didn't need to announce itself. I want you to know that my intentions don't have an expiration date. That when you're ready, when it's time, I'll ask properly. On one knee, with whatever words actually do the thing justice. He lifted the ring from the box and held it towards me. But I need you to know now. You and Sage are my family. And I don't leave my family without protection. Not ever again. I looked at the ring. I looked at Sage at the top of her hill, arms still out, laughing at nothing in particular, completely at ease in a way she hadn't been a year ago. The nightmares had stopped 2 months back. She slept through now. She had started a new thing where she taught Renzo the names of her stuffed animals in order of importance, which was an extensive and frequently revised ranking system that he engaged with complete seriousness. I looked back at him. At this man who had removed his watch in a train station cafe before stepping into something dangerous, who had stationed guards around my daughter's school without being asked, who had sat behind me in a cold courtroom so I could feel him there without needing to look, who had found me a room of my own and filled it with the version of my future I had put away. I had spent 2 years waiting for safety to be taken from me. I had stopped believing in the version of life where someone stood in front of the thing coming for you and simply said, "Not this time." I held out my hand. He slid the ring onto my finger, and his hand stayed around mine for a moment after, warm and steady and certain. "When you're ready," he said quietly. I looked at the ring, at Sage, at him. "I know what ready feels like now," I said. "I'll let you know." He almost smiled. It reached his eyes, which was the version that counted. Down the path, Sage came running back toward us, finished with the hill, ready for whatever came next. She reached the bench and climbed between us without ceremony, leaning against Renzo's arm and reaching for my hand at the same time. We sat there in the late afternoon light, the 3 of us, and for the first time in longer than I could accurately remember, I was not afraid of what came next. I was waiting for it.